Greta Thunberg, the Swedish high school student and climate activist, has inspired rallies and strikes for climate justice all across the world. And though she has had success in shaking people awake from comas of apathy and resignation, I have watched some of her videos, and it reveals to me a fundamental problem with the way that this conversation about the climate is being had between liberals and conservatives. Namely, that the left often fails in their activism by approaching the subject dogmatically. To see what I mean, watch her response here when asked if the attitude toward climate change is different in the US when compared to her native country of Sweden.
I would say yes, because here it feels like it is being discussed as something whether you believe in or not believe in. And where I come from, it's more like it's a fact. And
amid the intoxicating charisma of YouTube personalities and social media and the news from which we get our information, Greta is refreshing in her frankness and authenticity. But her statement, "it's seen as fact," is problematic because it suggests that people should already know it is a fact, and they don't. And they have reasons why they don't. These reasons are often not well addressed. I'm going to address them in this video in just a moment, but please don't interpret this video as a criticism of Greta herself. This attitude is rampant among climate change activists, and I only use this clip of her as an example. I remember, for example, a sign at the rally I attended this past week stating "believe in science." The statement that contradicts the very nature of science itself as being a process of using evidence and logic to support or reject hypotheses and to form conclusions. Science does not demand your faith, but that is what many liberals ask skeptics to do. To illustrate the typical conservative response, watch this clip by YouTuber Syndey Watson describe her liberal landlord picking a climate change-themed coffee mug to drink from.
As expected, she enthusiastically pulled a mug out of the cupboard, which shows how global warming will make the sea levels rise and which continents will eventually be submerged. I'm not joking. Genuinely, not a joke. It even says climate change on the bottom of it. Well, okay then. Because the mug is heat activated, when she started pouring in the boiling water, she started to show me how Australia will eventually be submerged and how basically the rising sea levels are going to destroy our planet. Because you know that hasn't literally been happening for millions and millions of years. Haha, science.
Now, personally, I don't find Syndey Watson very likable, but that's irrelevant. If the conservative side is skeptical, they have valid reasons for being skeptical. People will look at some evidence and they'll make valid observations, such as in the 500 billion year history of planet Earth, CO2 has been higher before. Temperatures have been higher before. We see this in ice cores. From these observations, they'll ask a perfectly valid question. Why is this a problem now? And why are we sure that it's us causing it this time? I mean, since it's happened before, and yada yada. I think that the complexity of the issue is part of the reason. Understanding and predicting atmospheric science and its effect on biology involves such a collision of different scientific fields that it requires a great deal of information to understand it well. And perhaps that's also why there's such difference in opinion between the public and the professionals. As far as the scientific community is concerned, the consensus is absolutely staggering. 97% or more of actively publishing climate scientists agree that climate warming trends over the past century are extremely likely due to human activities. But the layperson, especially perhaps poorly informed but skeptical laypersons, could easily look at certain data and conclude that maybe this is a natural cycle. Maybe it's not caused by us. Maybe it's inevitable. Maybe it's a liberal conspiracy. And the thing is that some people making climate change arguments don't understand the issue well enough to answer those questions. And sometimes liberals will respond by just dismissing the argument, or worse, using emotional arguments. Instead of dismissing those questions should be addressed. Burning sequestered carbon turns out organic carbon into carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is an example of a greenhouse gas. Water vapor is also a greenhouse gas. So that carbon that was safely tucked away for millennia is released into the atmosphere where it insulates the Earth, increasing temperatures. And yes, it's true that temperatures have been higher, that CO2 has been higher, but these past CO2 spikes always preceded a major mass extinction event. Take a moment to look at this graph that simply plots mass extinction events with CO2 levels over the past 500 million years. The Permian extinction, for example, during which around 90% of life on Earth died. It wasn't caused by humans, obviously, because humans weren't human yet, but it was caused by an event, most likely a colossal volcano eruption that led to many of the same things that we're seeing now. The dead organic matter lead to increased greenhouse gases, increased global temperatures, runaway greenhouse effect, and finally heterotrophic bacteria dominating our oceans. Some call this period of time the time when life almost died. Our situation is dire. Just because we've seen something of the type happen before in the history of planet Earth does not mean that A, this one was not caused by us, and B, does not mean that this is harmless or normal. It's been my belief for a while now that the generations of the future will look back on us and they will be disgusted. We'll be seen as the generation that could have done something because we had the knowledge, but chose not to because we chose our own comfort over the continuity of generations to come. Greta Thunberg has opened a new door of opportunity here. She appeals to many people, inspires many people, especially perhaps people on the left, for her illusion of being the sort of underdog. That is a messy and superficial reason for being an inspiration. After all, climatologists have been saying what she's been saying. They've been saying it for years without this effect. She'll acknowledge that herself. But in the end, the result has been a small bit of change, and that is powerful and needed. Looking back, in fact, on human history, real change has always been a messy and complicated business that's blemished with mixed intentions and mixed motivations. In conclusion, here's hoping that this movement will continue to grow and will awaken a world of people paralyzed by apathy and resignation. If you like my content, please like and share it. If you want to see my upcoming content, hit the subscribe button.